save those on my computer.
Oh yeah, it's just an email you click, boom, there it is.
Right.
Speaking of which, here we are at your first lesson. Technique stuff we talked about. Your right hand technique, we just talked about, like, kind of, rather than this, just extending your thumb down the string a little bit, so that, like, if you were on strings 4, 3, 2, and 1, you could easily pick all of them at the same time, or that you could move your thumb and your index finger independently. So just pause the video and just try to wrestle with that for a second, keeping in mind that we're not doing this, and that the song we're about to learn is going to force us not to do that at one point anyway. So maybe just, like, kind of try to play the easiest thing you know that's finger style in that position. Right now, just goof around a little bit, trying not to go revert back to this. Our actual song, just left hand overview during our E, we're just going to be going like E exists, E7 exists, which, like we talked about in the lesson, if we put in this note, it gets all, which is something we want sometimes. But here we're getting a full on E, and then the 7th there, which just sounds more thin. Cool. And then we're going to also do a thing where our pinky goes to the first string. So there's our whole left hand overview. You're going to be making an E chord while your pinky does stuff. And I believe we went. So left hand, you're grabbing E7. I'm totally like, this is for group recording, and I'm going to email it to you. There's no part where the video will be hard to find or interact with. Cool. So I'm going, and our bass line is that. So maybe just do some of that. Just going 6 string, 4 string on its own until it feels like autopilot. Cool. And we're going to go, here's the very first thing. Then with our high bass now, we're going to pick these 3 fingers. It's going to go. And then we're hitting the high note. So it's 1, 2, and there you go. So just pause your video and get good at that. And again, when you're first doing it, pretend rhythm doesn't exist. Pretend it's just a list of things that goes, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. As soon as you've memorized the stuff on the page, don't look at the page. We're working in a section that's really short, so think about what your hands are doing, think visually, because that's what you're going to be thinking about when you're playing. So our first 2 beats just went 1, 2, and then our second half was a little bit easier. We went just like that. So the rest of that was just chilling on E. Next bit, we go. Alright. Can I see your page actually, just so I can remind myself how I wrote it? Thanks, appreciate it. Make a game of doing different ones. You could just have like some template. Not bad. Cool. Right. Oh, I gotta write anyhow. So yeah, first measure was, the second half was just single notes. So that makes that whole thing. Cool. Second measure, left hand overview, pinky on the first string. That's gonna come back off and go back to the E7. And that's us going. So right there, we were picking all 4 of our fingers that we use, and that's going to force your thumb into the right juxtaposition. So there's us. And left hand, that's pinky on, pinky off. 1, 2, and then it's going to end the same way that our last one did. This like 3 and 4. Not literally the same. So yeah, there we go. As in. Excuse me. There's our whole E thing. I'm going to do that again real slow. Cool. So taking the approach I've encouraged you to in the lesson of just doing little sections, just stop the video, so you can just absolutely kill that. Avoid the part where you start looping sections. So you're going to learn the first measure and go 1 good attempt, pause. What did I do wrong? 1 good attempt, pause. Then rather than starting there and then trying the second bit, you're just going to pretend the song starts at the second bit, and so on like that for the rest of your memorizing life. Cool. So there's our E bit. When we get to A, we simpled it up quite a bit. We're just sitting on this 1A7 grip with this, and realizing that there's like the next stuff that you've been doing with That's all like A, you know, an A. Cool. So just A. Either one's cool. We always would like to use adjacent fingers, but if you want to use your ring finger, it's cool. So yeah, the entire 4-chord part, the A7 part, we're just sitting on this 1 chord grip. But we are going to have our first percussive things we do. First 2 beats just go boom, boom. That's bass note followed by pinch. And then, so the second half was I hit the bass note, I hit the high note, then I strum down with this part of my hand, and we're trying to just hit the 4 high strings so that we still hear. What I mean is like, still sounds like, is in there. Well, yeah, this is like a full-on made recording shit. You got it, man. So that's the first half of our A7. And yeah, so try to just work on doing that and then returning to good position. And then just putting your hand back in picking position because you're not used to having done that. And this is our first case in point, why not pinky all the time? Cool. Second half. And then the same exact ending. So that was pretty identical. We hit all 4 fingers. Low bass, high bass, and the same exact ending from the previous one. So put that together, our A stuff sounds like. Cool. And our whole thing sounds like. Cool. So let me get a good one. There we are. Cool. So yeah, just working little sections, finish as you go. The one concept we didn't talk about during the lesson that we need to is accidentally muting the strings by putting your hand back on them over here, like going like, and then putting your fingers back on there, which is the only thing that we didn't talk about consciously. What I mean is, like, we want this to ring out, and it's really tempting to go. It's like it's a fine line between hovering right above this. So that's something to be mindful of now, adding another layer of stuff to think about. Now that you can actually play the riff, watch yourself for doing it. Alright, good stuff.